Hello, everyone. This is Mariah Cruz, and you're listening to the Spiritual Deep Dives podcast. For thousands of years, there were ancient spiritual truths and mystical teachings passed down only to the highest initiates walking the path back to God. It hasn't been until recent times that this secret knowledge has been available to the masses. Our team spent over 40 years researching many diverse spiritual and religious sources, recording the wisdom from the ascended saints and sages of East and West, and tapping into God's Holy Spirit to reveal the spiritual truths and science behind the unseen forces that govern our lives. In this podcast, we will explore these teachings from a unique perspective that you probably have never heard before, and show practical ways you can integrate them into your life to resolve deep-seated personal problems, accelerate your soul's evolution, and help solve the world's dilemmas. In this series of spiritual deep dives, we are exploring the violet transmuting flame from teachings by Mark and Elizabeth Prophet of the Summit Lighthouse. In our last episode, we dove deep into the science of the violet flame and its remarkable links in natural healing, molecular biology, physics, and even the mysteries of superstring theory. Now we will be hearing several extraordinary testimonials from people who have experienced the violet flame firsthand in their lives. We think you will be amazed at just how powerful this spiritual gift is. But before we begin, I wanted to mention that there is wording used in these testimonials that you may not have heard before. These include the words decrees, dictation, and ascended masters. If you're interested in understanding what these terms mean in the context of this topic, listen to episode 1 of this series. Okay, so let's start with Barbara, who was dealing with depression before trying violet flame decrees. To her amazement, her decrees had a far greater effect than she could have ever imagined. Here's what she wrote. Hi, Mariah. Something remarkable happened in our family that I'm excited to have the opportunity to share. I first began giving violet flame decrees out of a sense of desperation. Ever since I was a teenager, I felt depressed during the month of January, and each year seemed worse than the last. I just wanted to crawl under my bed and not come out. My sister, who had been giving the violet flame for 18 years, assured me that it would help cure my January funks. Finally, I decided to try it. I sat down and began giving violet flame decrees from videos by the Summit Lighthouse on YouTube. I didn't think that I was accomplishing much since I would get tongue-tied and couldn't keep up with the speed at which they were given, but I kept on trying. Suddenly, I had a startling confirmation that something was happening. I was in my office at home and the rest of the family were in the basement. My children didn't know that I was giving decrees. They didn't even know what decrees were. My 8-year-old son, Nathan, came to the top of the basement stairs and started calling me. I turned off the decrees and came out to see what he needed. He stared at me for a few seconds with a surprised look and then said, "Mom, your hair, it's purple." I looked at my hair. It still looked blonde to me. "Really?" I said. "Yes," he answered. Later I asked him if he really saw purple. He told me he saw purple all around me. As I continued giving decrees during the next few days, Nathan told me that everyone in the house and all of the rooms looked purple. I decided that he must be one of those children who are able to see into the spiritual world, so I shared the secret of decrees with him. He asked me to do them in his room while he was going to sleep. Soon, he memorized some decrees and began giving them himself. Not only did the violet flame transform my home, it also transformed my state of mind during the following January. Even though I was unemployed and low on money, I was happy. I could have felt so depressed, but the violet flame helped me psychologically and helped us to keep the harmony in our home. Soon, I found a job that I loved, and 2 years later, I am still giving my violet flame decrees. We indeed do see truth through the eyes of children. Thank you for sharing your experience. Next, let's listen to what Kathleen wrote us. She had first-hand experience with the violet flame's protective power against the prying mind of a psychic. I had been giving decrees for a few years when I was invited to a company party. The entertainment was going to be provided by a psychic. I liked my privacy and didn't want him seeing into my aura and reading my thoughts and feelings. So before going, I gave a decree for protection and visualized the violet flame filling my aura. At the party, the psychic began giving uncannily accurate readings of the guests. He spoke to each person one by one, correctly naming and identifying various family members, sometimes telling factual stories about a recent incident in someone's life. However, when the psychic got to me, he made a vague comment and skipped to the next person. My boss, who was watching everyone in line, gave me a funny look and shrugged his shoulders. The next day, I asked him if he knew why the psychic didn't read my aura. He said that afterwards the psychic told him that it was easy to read people's minds. Their thoughts were dangling in their auras, hanging around the outer edges. But not mine. When he looked at my aura, all he could see was a violet light. So I learned something interesting and important that day. The violet flame can protect us from psychic energy. I even think that it might also keep other people's negative thoughts from entering our minds and influencing us. In any case, I will definitely be giving violet flame decrees daily. That's amazing. I didn't know how psychics can read our minds. Apparently what I heard about them is true. I'm glad there's a way we can protect ourselves from this type of unwanted intrusion. Thank you for sending in your experience with the violet flame. At Summit Lighthouse study centres around the world, people gather every week to give violet flame decrees. Invoking the violet flame in a group multiplies the power of the decrees, and people say they feel a more powerful energy in a group setting. Anyone is welcome to join these sessions and experiment further with this spiritual power. Spiritual seekers also enjoyed attending Elizabeth Clare Prophet's lectures about the teachings of the Ascended Masters and the use of decrees which she conducted around the world. Jeff and his friend had a life-changing experience at one such lecture. He had never seen Mrs. Prophet speak before and was not prepared for the powerful violet flame energy he would experience as she began giving a transfer of light from Saint Germain to those present. Here's what Jeff wrote explaining what happened. Thanks for having the podcast and giving me the opportunity to share my experience. My friend Steve and I were at a lecture by Elizabeth Prophet, and towards the end of it, the audience was invited to come up to the stage and receive a blessing from Saint Germain through her. So I joined the line leading up to the stage. Oddly, as soon as I got in line, I felt an incredible surge of light. At the same moment, glancing behind me, I saw Steve gasp and his eyes widen. I didn't say anything at the time, but wondered what that was all about. After the blessing, Steve told me that his spiritual sight opened, and he saw a huge column of violet fire descend from above and surround both me and the entire stage. Although I couldn't see it, I definitely felt it. It felt like all the cells in my body were tingling in response to this energy. It felt like my body was cleansed and accelerated, which is the only way I can explain the sensation. I have never had an experience like this in my life. In fact, this was the first spiritual event I ever attended. It was mind-blowing and had a profound effect on my life. It's something I will never forget. Thank you for sending in that great testimony. In episode 1 of this series, Bill mentioned the fact that everyone has a different experience when they give violet flame decrees, so it makes sense that Jeff just felt it, but his friend Steve actually saw it. Before we continue to our next testimony, I would like to play a short violet flame decree that was led by Mrs. Prophet. If you want to try giving violet flame decrees yourself, check out the links in our notes. So here's the decree.
Radiant spiral violet flame descend now blaze through me. Radiant spiral violet flame set free, set free, set free. Radiant violet flame, oh come, expand and blaze thy light through me. Radiant violet flame, oh come, reveal God's power for all to see. Radiant violet flame, oh come, awake the earth and set it free. Radiance of the violet flame, expand and blaze through me. Radiance of the violet flame, expand for all to see. Radiance of the violet flame, establish mercy's outpost here. Radiance of the violet flame, come transmute now all fear.
Next, we'll hear from Daryl, who gave up on religion until he had a chance encounter with the violet flame. Here's his story. When science and religion seemed to conflict, I dropped religion. I had joined a fundamentalist Christian church in my teens, but couldn't reconcile its teachings on creationism with what I was learning about evolution. I also couldn't accept the premise that those who don't follow the Christian message are doomed to hell. I thought this was a very narrow viewpoint of life. I soon became cynical about life in general and cared only about living in the moment. Although I finished college and began grad school, I wanted more of a social life, so quit my studies and began a life of partying. So this was my modus operandi for the next several years. But during this period, there was always a subtle thought in my mind that I was missing out on the spiritual side of life. Eventually, I came across the teachings of the Ascended Masters. These teachings filled the gap I felt these last several years and helped me reclaim my spirituality and motivation without threatening my scientific beliefs. I was particularly attracted to Eastern spirituality and the Masters outside of Western tradition. I attended a seminar on the teachings of the Ascended Masters given by Elizabeth Prophet, but was reluctant to try the decrees she introduced during her talk. Then, I attended a dictation in which Mrs. Prophet delivered a message from Serapis Bey, an Eastern Ascended Master. Serapis challenged those present to experiment with the violet flame for 6 months. He said, "You won't remember in 6 months where you were when you started. You will be so many miles from the point of your origin." I was intrigued, so began giving 15 minutes of violet flame decrees every day. Before long, I experienced some profound results. I quit drinking, became more motivated and creative at work, and I felt my life was being filled with a new sense of purpose. I also reformulated my goals to become less materialistic and more spiritual. After looking back 6 months, I really was amazed at how much I had changed. I figured that if I had stayed on the path of partying, I'd be an alcoholic, or nearly so. So I feel that the violet flame unquestionably reset my life in the right direction. I resumed my graduate studies and also regained an appreciation of Christianity. I realized that it's not Jesus' teachings that I objected to. It was only the narrow fundamentalist interpretation of Christianity. Thanks, Daryl, for sharing your experience. I think many who are listening will appreciate how the violet flame can clear the barriers we create in our mind that prevent us from moving forward in a more positive direction. This spiritual fire also seems to clear away mental density that can keep us from recognizing what is true and what isn't. This reminds me of what was mentioned in episode 1, that the violet flame is an aspect of the Holy Spirit. One of the 9 gifts of the Holy Spirit is the word of knowledge, which refers to right knowledge and the correct interpretation of the scriptures. So we might conclude that giving violet flame decrees can help us recognize the truth when we hear it. Finally, we'll hear from Grace, who had a remarkable physical healing by using the violet flame. Here's what she wrote. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story. I don't know of any other channels that discuss the violet flame, let alone share stories like this, so I'm glad to be part of your podcast. As strange as this will sound, I want to begin my story with an event involving a boyfriend from long ago that I believe played a pivotal role in my health for the next 30 years. We had what I thought was a deep, lifelong relationship. I was in love and thought we would spend the rest of our life together. But after about a year, he started completely ignoring me. I even gave myself a complete makeover hoping to please him, but he eventually broke up with me. This sent shockwaves into my system and caused deep resentment and depression. Shortly after the breakup, I started developing asthma symptoms, which only got worse over time. Fast forwarding 30 years, I was still struggling with asthma. Every night a tightness filled my lungs, so I had to reach for my inhaler and sometimes a pulmo-aid or even stronger medicine. Fortunately, at one point, I found out about the violet flame, so, short of other options, started giving the decrees daily on this problem. But even when invoking this spiritual fire into this situation, I still felt that something was blocking my healing. But then one day, it dawned on me that I started having asthma symptoms, right after I broke up with my boyfriend decades ago, and perhaps the resentment of my ex-boyfriend was somehow connected to my asthma. After I made the connection between my negative emotions and physical condition, I gave about 90 minutes of violet flame decrees and asked God to be forgiven for tying up so much energy in this failed relationship. While giving the decrees, I visualized myself putting this grudge and my self-pity into a giant violet flame bonfire. I felt all my emotional knots being dissolved and consumed. It was a very intense decree session that I put all my intentions, heart and soul into it. Well, shortly after that session, the physical effects were dramatic. About 2 days later, I was thinking it was time to get a refill for my inhaler. That's when I realized that I hadn't used it in 2 days. Surprisingly, I haven't had an asthma attack since. What's more, I've been exposed to house dust, fall pollens and various chemicals. I've choked on food, laughed with abandon and even gone for walks, all with no problem. In short, I'm like a normal person again, free to breathe the breath of life. That's a remarkable story. It's very telling that the improvement in Grace's health didn't come until she identified and resolved the cause behind the condition. Also, her experience actually ties into what Alma mentioned in our last episode, when she discussed the science behind how the violet flame removes calcified emotional debris, which helps reconnect our bodies back to their natural healing mechanism. I wanted to thank everyone again for sending in their stories. I think each presenter gave a different facet of the effects we can expect when we integrate the violet flame in our lives. So this concludes this series of spiritual deep dives into the violet transmuting flame. Now you have in your hands one of the most powerful secrets for your soul's acceleration that has ever been released to the world. The question is, are you ready to walk through the door that has been opened and join with the hearts of thousands across the world who are also using the violet flame? Be sure to catch our next series where we will do a deep dive into the ancient practice of dynamic decrees and what makes them the most powerful of all applications to the Godhead for effecting lasting personal and world change. Thank you for listening to Spiritual Deep Dives. If you like this type of content, please subscribe to this podcast. Be sure and check out the links in our notes for more resources related to this topic.